Good morning, Mr. Sheffer. How are you doing?
Good, good morning, Tom. How are you?
I am wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Black Friday.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any plans to snap up any bargains today? That's a
No,
no.
no, no. But maybe some Galician beef. Apparently, it's a 30% off.
Some Galician beef. I
Yeah.
am familiar with Galician beef.
Oh, oh yeah.
It's some of the best beef in the world.
So
I
apparently,
no, it is 100%. If you're an aficionado of good steak, then Galicia. Do you know where Galicia is?
is it near the Basque region?
It's like that patch of land above Portugal
Oh, is it? Oh,
in
okay.
Spain.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Well,
there you
I
go.
will
An
defer to
educational
your
beginning.
educational beginning. So, so what are we going to talk about today, Tom?
Well, I think due to popular demand, um, we're going to bring back objection handling part two. I think
Oh,
we
he
talked
wrote
about
in
it.
again, did he?
Yeah, exactly. We talked about it 2 weeks ago, and I think it was fair to say we only really scratched the surface of what's one of the biggest topics in sales.
Mm,
So I think we talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, kind of like the early objections that come up, price objections, which is obviously a really important one, and some of the concepts behind, a guiding principles of how you should deal with objections. But I
mm,
think we want to dig into it a bit more this week, talk about some of
yes.
the different objections that come up. I think email objections is something we should talk about because I think increasingly in this digital world we live in, we're not just picking up the phone and talking to people.
Mm,
We're having to do a lot of the communication with clients via email, in
yeah.
between calls, in advance of calls, after calls, etc. And objections are going to
Mm,
come up in those scenarios. And what are the best strategies there?
hmm
And I think we also want to look at those objections that are coming up very late in the pitch of
mm,
where people have been a bit indecisive, and want to think
yeah.
about it.
So the uncertain customer who is not committing, he's not giving you any buy-in, or she's not giving you any buy-in. And what do you do? How
Yeah,
do you handle that?
because I think we touched upon the point last week when we were talking about urgency. Um, and I should add, if anyone wants to see any of our past episodes, they can go to businessreporter.com. They're all available there.
Business-reporter.com, just to be precise.
Business-reporter.com. They're all there available for download. But last week we talked about urgency, and I made the point that the art of sales is the art of making people make decisions. And I think that
Yeah.
indecisiveness and that wanting to think about it and not being prepared to commit to making a decision is ultimately an objection. And it's like we need to figure out how to overcome that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I was talking about to some salespeople this morning, even, was it's about your attitude as well. That when you're focused on an outcome, your outcome is to get the deal, or at least make the customer make a decision. But if you want the outcome to be, as a salesperson, to get the deal, it's about how do you view. If you're constantly thinking about how do I get the deal, or how do I get the customer to invest in something, in our case, because we've got such a wide range of products, then that should be the outcome rather than, you know, you need. And the other thing is, at some point the salesperson's got to take responsibility for suggesting, but we'll go into all of that in a bit with the
Well,
uncertain customer.
let's should we start with the uncertain customer then?
The uncertain customer, yeah. So
Yeah,
I think about this quite a bit during the pitch. I think what the salesperson should understand is, if you're talking to a customer and they're not showing you any kind of commitment, they're uncertain throughout, we've got to understand, are they uncertain because they're genuinely uncertain, or are they just an amazing negotiator and showing indifference because they basically want to not show they're too keen, because they might
well,
have got the best deal.
an experienced buyer is usually going to keep their cards close to their chest,
Yeah,
like a good poker player, not want to give too much away,
that's true.
because if they seem too keen, then that puts them in a weaker negotiating position later on.
Yeah. So obviously we did an exercise this morning, and we sell, let's say we're selling content marketing solution. So we wanted to write down what are the 4 or 5 key objections that people are going to come up with for reasons they're not going to buy. And we came up with budget, timing. I want to speak to someone else. I want to think about it. I don't know if this is going to give me a good return on investment. I don't know if this is the right value.
Yeah. And I guess
And
a lot of those blend into each other as well,
they all
don't
blend in. So with the uncertain customer, we took one which is, let's say I think about it, or I don't know the value or something. So one of the questions that we were playing around with is we need to come up with a series of questions which has a probable outcome or probable answers. So you're trying to find probable answers. And if the customer says this, then you can go here. So typically in the old days, we would set, the customer might say, oh, let me think about it, for example. And then, of course, the salesperson was taught, well, what is it you want to think about? I understand, of course, you want to show empathy. I understand you want to think about it, but what is it on the back of your mind? And then the customer say, well, everything really. And okay, so if I can break it down, let's go through the pros and cons. And it's trying to be very logical. I found that for me, I found that didn't get good results. But it's almost like, because the customer, if you think about it, it's quite obvious where this is going. And the customer's already defensive. And now I feel I'm making them even more defensive. So that never really worked. So I'm going to have to try to think of somewhere where I can take the customer away from that so they don't almost feel the conversation is too pressurized. So I need to
they? Okay.
diffuse the situation. So let's say someone says with the advertising, and let's say the advertising that we're proposing or what you're proposing, if you're watching as a salesperson, is I'm going to be pitching something that they've never done before, that is an alien concept. So you might think of something that you've never bought before. Maybe it's going to be Black Friday. What's going to be the thing that you're going to buy or you're selling that they've never had before? Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So one of the things that you might want to say, especially in our advertising, is we would say, okay, so let me let me ask you a question. And I might say this. That's always a good way to get a yes or to diffuse the situation.
Okay. So set the scene a little bit here. So like you're saying, let me ask, what's the customer just said? Like what's the customer
Right.
coming
The
to you with?
customer you've basically pitched some three items, three options,
Yeah.
and the customer's like, okay, could you put it in writing? Let me know and give me a call back in a couple of weeks or something like that,
Something quite vague and
vague,
non-committal. It
vague and
gives you a
non-committal.
feeling that the likelihood is they might ghost you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or it's going to be a no.
Yeah, that's your feel. That's the feeling within the
Yeah.
salesperson in this
Yeah.
scenario, and they're like, okay, if I just do what they say, I'm pretty sure I know where this is going. I need to be proactive here.
Yeah. So the harsh way, you could go in and just hit them between the eyes and just say it seems that you're not 100% convinced, and you could go that way. But
I
let's
guess
say
I guess the first thing that we need to say to any salesperson though is do something.
do
Because
something.
I think the most common thing that a salesperson does in that scenario is they're like, oh God, yeah, they're clearly not interested, or I'm getting bad vibes, but yeah, just agree, just comply,
Yes.
and we'll just go with the flow. But I guess the point is, if you've got that feeling that if you do what they say, it's going to go nowhere, do something, be bold and kind of put yourself in a scenario where you're going to challenge them there and then because you've got them there. So I think the first
Correct.
key point is do something because I think a lot of people
Yeah.
that's where they fall down.
But I suppose if you're a salesperson that is convinced that everyone's going to say yes, then you wouldn't do something, would you?
Yeah,
You just follow what they. How many times did the customer not have? We've had salespeople, Tom, that basically you go, but I thought they were going to say yes. You go, but how many times does a customer have to do this before you kind of not learn?
yeah. Well, I guess what we're saying is make sure as a salesperson you've got your radar tuned in to not be
Yeah,
to be able to pick up on the signals of them saying that okay, if they say yeah, put it in writing and maybe we'll speak later, you know, signals, that
yeah.
that isn't a good sign. you know, so you
No,
need to be able to pick up on that as well, I guess, rather than being like,
excellent.
oh, they want something in writing. That's good.
That's true. I was
They
speaking
must.
to one of our salespeople this morning. They said if the customer's too keen, they know they're not going to do it. So
Well,
you
there's that as well.
it's almost the radar. Where some people go, they're definitely going to do it. Anyway, so one of the things you might want to do is try to take a breath and try to empathize. And it's difficult because your heart's racing and you don't want to do it. And anyway, so you might want to say, okay, so you understand. One of the things that I like to go down and say, so let me ask you, Tom, when you're doing something like this, are you looking for this to be more of a one-off, or are you looking for this to be a more of a sustained program for you? Should it work? What's your thinking?
Um, do you want me to be
Well,
the
then, yeah,
customer
if
in
you
this
answer that,
scenario?
for example,
Um,
yes.
well, I guess we're looking at it as a one-off to start with, but if it works, then there's always the potential for it to be something more sustained.
Right. So what I've done is, first of all, I slow right down. I'm not the tendency is to be pushy, but because that would be my natural reaction. But I have to really concentrate on slowing down, maybe even pausing, maybe even putting a few ums in, because I don't want the customer to feel this is rehearsed. I want the customer to feel this is a unique experience. So,
Okay.
and so it's almost like
The
I'm
irony.
thinking, yes, I know. So I'm thinking this through. That's the impression. A bit like, watching an actor on a stage or whatever. You want to feel like they're special, and they're not going to feel special with. Be like going on a 6 dates, and you take people to the same restaurant every night, the same woman, or you might feel okay, I'm not being treated specially here. So anyway, so this you've got to treat them specially. So are you looking for this as a long-term one-off or whatever? Then the customer mostly will say, well, it depends if it works. If it works, look, fine, okay. So now I might take them a little bit sideways, and I want to point out these questions. You want to try to keep an order, but things may change, or you might want to tweak it. It's not an absolute. So I might say, well, so with you, then obviously it's important to determine whether it works or not, and that would give you the confidence to repeat.
Of course.
Yeah. So Tom, I'm not sure. Have you ever done anything like this before? Have you ever had a feature on a Wall Street Journal or an article on a hub
Well,
and or Washington Post or any of the brands or Bloomberg or Wired or
we've
anything like
done
that?
similar activity, but nothing of this scale.
I see. So this would be slightly alien to you in terms of how successful it could help you win huge contracts that we spoke about, or it might not.
Well,
Is that
that's yeah, that's the great unknown.
okay? So it would be a case of so. Well, let's imagine we did something together. Would you feel comfortable if I kept in touch with you afterwards for say about 6 months to go through what's working, what's not working, whether we need to tweak anything to ensure and try to find out the success of this?
Yeah, in principle.
And okay, so but would 6 months give you enough time?
It's difficult to know, but I would imagine so. You know, I think after 6 months we'd have a pretty good gauge on how impactful it had been.
So how do you feel the best way to start this to find out whether this is going to work for you? What would be the best place to start for you, Tom?
Um, it's a good question, and I guess that's what I need to go away and have a think about. You know, so I can make the best decision.
Okay. Well, look, what I would recommend is, and then you have to recommend something. Well, you could say, look, have if you want to go even further and customers even being more non-committal, you might say, look, Tom, let me ask you, have you ever? I saw you at the trade show. Now, remember the first time? Have you the stand you took? Is that the stand you started with, or did you start smaller and went bigger later on?
Um, to be honest, that's the same stand size we've done each time, but we have done it,
Oh, I see.
a few years now.
But you repeat because it works.
Um, yeah, like there was some question mark. You know, sometimes I
Sometimes
think
it
we're
works.
there just
Yeah.
because we feel like it would be bad if we weren't there.
Well, look,
But
yeah. Well, let me ask you: do you have any customers now that spend quite a bit of money with you today that maybe started smaller?
oh, of course.
And what's the reason they tend to increase over the time?
Well, I think we cross sell them into different products and platforms and expand. And yeah, to your point, ultimately, it's because we're delivering value.
Okay. Well, look, I would like to be that customer for you. I would like you to be that customer for me. What I'd suggest is why don't we start with something that's comfortable for you, that works for you. And if it works, then we can work together. And if it works, obviously, don't do it again. How does that
All
sound?
right, I'll do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, there you go. If only life were that simple. Obviously, you were particularly horrible. Now,
Well, I started off mean, and then I just thought I thought I'd be a bit
you give
nicer.
up. You just give up.
Yeah,
You just get,
exactly.
yeah, exactly. You know,
But
sometimes the
I could
salespeople
feel,
give up, and sometimes,
yeah, but I could feel what you were doing because we talk about push and pull, right? And I think what
yeah,
you were doing there was definitely pull. Because as I was in the role play and I was kind of thinking how to answer, there was I think one question in particular where I think you said, "What do you think is the best way forward?" How do we kind of you kind of set the scene that we're in a bit of a
yeah,
quandary here, and then you put it on me. Well, what do you think is the best way out of this? And
yes,
I could that was like a pull moment where it was like I was kind of being forced into making a decision. But like I did
yeah,
pull back and I made it harder for you, but
yeah.
I could see how
Yeah,
the
and I
technique was
felt I
working.
was drowning at one point, and I felt I was I was not going to get this over the line. Look, I think we have to be realistic. You know, you should know your odds now. If you're a salesperson, you should know what your conversion rate is. You should probably know everything. Your conversion rate when you pitch at this, your conversion rate when you pitch at that. How many pitches turn into a deal if you're talking to this person? You can get very granular, but the key thing is this isn't going to work out every time. Of course, it isn't. Best salespeople in the world, best poker players in the world don't win every hand. But it's about odds. So are your odds improving? Are you losing less?
Yeah,
So when you go into this, you will get people still pulling away, and you'll still people go, oh, okay. But the if I can tell you with almost a huge degree of certainty that if you go in going, let's take another approach. Let's say I went in with this approach, Tom. You say, I'm not sure. Let's say you just went with that or whatever.
yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm honest, Brett.
Look, I tell you what, Tom. Look, you've not done something like this before, have you?
No, no,
No.
no. That's why I'm not sure.
Yeah. Look, you're not going to know Tom unless you do it. So if you don't do it, you're not going to know if it's going to work or not going to work. And really, the only way of finding out is if you do it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that's the way to do. So where do you think we should start? Let's say you went that approach. How does that feel from a receiving it?
I for me as a person, I quite like it.
Okay.
I quite enjoy people being straight, direct, and saying, let's kind of
Mm,
cut the BS, and be like, look, this is where we are. You haven't done it. Look, we could talk all day, but the only way you're really going to know if it works is if you try it. Because
mm,
I can pull everything I've got out to try and convince you, but at some point you're going to have a leap of faith. So the question is, where does this need to be? What do we need to do for you to try it, see if it can work, and then we can build a relationship from there. I think that kind of
mm.
straight
That suits more
talking,
your personality.
I prefer that
Yeah.
because I like it. It cuts kind of through the crap a little bit. But I guess that's where part of the skill of a salesperson will come in as well, because you've got to judge the room a little bit. You've got to try and
Mm.
get a feel for the person you're talking to and how they're going to be and what they're going to be responsive to.
Yeah, I think the two things that I had in common, because I wanted to demonstrate two different approaches. One, but they both ended with a question. They both ended with an open question. What do you think is the best way to do it? That's where so if you imagine that's where you're ending up in a place of what do you think the best way forward is to test this? Right. And we've come up with the concept first, which is at some point you're going to have to try it unless you're going to know.
Yeah,
So what's the best way? So the first way your feeling might be the customer might feel they're being played. It may not be as genuine. There's a certain disingenuousness about it, or not. And then the second way, it was much straighter down the line, hard hitting. Look, enough already. Let's cut the BS. We're doing it or we're not doing it. As they say, shit will get off the pot. That's basically it. Stop
Yeah.
wasting time. So I not personally, I've done things both ways, and um, they'll both work to a degree. But it is about your confidence to go in and read in the room. So if someone's maybe you feel they're a nice person and they're a straight talker, then maybe you need to be a straight talking person back. If they're a person that's soft and probably more gentle, then maybe you want to take the first approach. But it is about reading the room, and it is about understanding
Even
which one works.
even when you're taking the first approach, there's got to be a point though where you maybe act a bit more assertive, and where you can say, well, look, this is a situation we can't. I think we're on the same page here. If you're asking my opinion, I think you should do this. I think based on everything we've said, based on the situation we're in, this option is going to be best based on the experience I've got working with customers very similar to yourself. This is what I believe you should do. And I
Yeah.
think there's got to be a point where you kind of insert some authority into the conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I quite like I quite like it. If I was talking to and make me a family member, if I was talking to my auntie and she was asking me which one I should do, and she ran a business like yours, I would tell her to do this. You know, just
Right. Okay.
thinking about how you're going to say things and think what's going to be more powerful. And I like to mess around with different ways of saying things.
But to be honest, when I'm speaking to some of my sales guys and they're talking to me and asking for advice as to like how they should structure a package or what they should recommend, I'll often say to them, it's like, and I'm just being, genuine, having a behind the scenes chat with them. It's like, honestly, if it was my best mate I was selling to, that's what I'd sell.
Yeah,
And I think it's true because sometimes
yeah,
you can make a recommendation that you're not sometimes the customer wants something, and in
mm,
your heart of hearts you're like, oh, I'm not sure that's the best thing for you, Mr. Customer, but
yeah,
you'll go along with it because it's what the customer wants. Yes sir, 3 bags full, sir, whatever it takes to get your deal over the line. But actually, it can be more powerful for you to say, I hear you, but honestly, based on my experience, this is what's best for you.
yeah,
That's just my opinion, but I think there's power in it. And
yeah.
ultimately your product better than your customer does.
Yeah, I think the real thing is it's true empathy and it's true um, sincerity that's going to that win over the day. So this is really an
Not
exercise,
fake sincerity.
not fake sincerity. Not we know. So
Or if
obviously,
it
some
is,
people,
it has to be really, really good fake sincerity.
if it's really good fake sincerity, but then again, sometimes the way I remember when I started in sales, and I was being sincere, and I went out with a colleague of mine, Martin, and he said to me, "Why are you lying?" And I said, I wasn't lying. He goes, well, you certainly acted like you were lying.
Right.
And it was only because I was very shy and I sort of looked down and I didn't really look him in the eye. And he thought I was lying. And I said, but I wasn't lying. He said, but you came across lying. And
Telling the
so,
truth in a shifty manner.
which is, well, yeah, telling the truth in a kind of lying way. But
Okay.
because
So,
it's
so
because of lack of confidence, really.
I tell you what, we've covered, we've dug into that. I think there's some good role plays there. I think there's some good stuff, but we need to talk. Let's put this scenario where you're not on the phone with them. You can't immediately respond to them. You've sent them a proposal, or you've kind of you've had half the pitch, and they come back to you, and you send them an email, say, look, when can we catch up? I want to have a chat about this, and they come back to you and say, look, I'm not really sure. I need a bit more time to think about this, and they send that to you via email. They don't have a direct dial.
Right.
You did a Zoom call with them. You've got no way of just immediately contacting them. You've got no choice but to respond via email. What's the play? How is your approach different if you're doing it by email?
Okay. So we really are in a tough crowd here. So what is your objective?
That's a great place to start. I was going to say, before you even start writing the email, it's like, well, what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve from sending the email? That's got to
Yeah.
be your starting point.
Yes. So I try, if my best case scenario for me is to get them on another call.
Yep.
That's where I really want to go. So how do I rescue this? So first of all, if they've said no, sometimes it might be easy because they're communicating. Um,
Yeah. But they haven't said no. They're saying, I just need a bit more time to think about it.
Yeah. So this is coming back to what we did last week. It's almost like, how do I create urgency? What's going to be something from which you're forcing them to make a decision? Well, it could be a number of things, but obviously within the playbook, um, that when you reach out, you've got to go incentively to encourage them to get back on the phone. So what's going to entice them? And that's obviously going to be drawn from the first phone call, which is, we had a situation recently where they couldn't make it. They're not making a decision. So we had to give them a production timeline. Well, look, if you want it to come out in February, we need to, what you mentioned, you wanted to come out in February. So we really need to make a decision by this date. Otherwise, we can't bring it in February for whatever resource reasons or whatever reasons. You might want to table this. So when we can do this, you might want to trigger things like their competition as well. So if you're talking to their competitors, you could say, look, I've been talking to blah, 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 XYZ company, and they are interested in this. So you can trigger a response,
So,
but I always do a pull and push. So I would probably say something like, look, but however, if this isn't for you, then kindly let me know,
so
as well.
I guess an important thing that we're saying here is that the ability to be able to respond to that email powerfully and effectively relies upon you having done your job well up to the point of you sending that email. Because what you want are for there to have been some things that you've discussed, such as a time when you want this to be published, the fact that you are speaking to their competitors. Then within that email that you send, these are things that you can then reference back to and kind of use as leverage to try and get them to resume the conversation with a bit more urgency,
Yeah,
because at the moment they're just
absolutely.
fobbing you off. But if you haven't done that previously, you're on the back foot. So this is, nothing. Whenever we talk about anything, it's never in isolation. Everything
No.
always has to be joined up, and this is why it's important to do all the little things right throughout an entire pitch, because it makes everything stronger.
Yeah, you can only control what you can control. And, you can't control whether that person had a fight with their boss that day, or, you know, or they had a personal incident at home. You can't legislate for that. So you don't know what's going on with,
So
so
what's going to be the reason for them to get back on the phone with you though? Because I get it that we need to kind of, maybe we can leverage their competition, maybe we can talk about, put a bit of urgency into it and say, well, look, we reference this date, so thinking about it is a bit perilous. But
okay,
what's going to be, how are we going to get them to actually
well,
talk
it's
to you?
either going to be fear of loss. So they're going to miss out. We're going to have to give it away. Look, there's a couple of approaches we did do when someone wouldn't make a decision. We had a situation where, if you can't get them on the phone, someone put it right and said, look, I need to, let's say you've designed something where they get some kind of exclusivity, but in some cases you won't have that option. You could say, look, I'm writing to you. You've got to have left it a bit of time, but I'm writing you because I need to let you know, blah, 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 needs to take, is being, has offered me that last slot. You could, if you've got room for discount, you could try this. You could say, look, blah, 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 have offered me that slot for this amount. I know we spoke about £15,000, but they've offered it me for 12 and a half, which which I've told them that you've got it on reserve, which I've told them we've got someone else interested. So look, I'll give you to the end of the day at 4 o'clock today. If you've come back to me by that time, it's yours. If you want to pay more than that or that amount. But if you haven't come to me by 4 o'clock, I will now, unfortunately, I will release it from the system and I cannot give it to you. So you remove it. I cannot give it to you. But just to say, if you do not come back to me for any reason, I wish you all the best. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I really hope your company does well. And hopefully we can talk at another time. So it was a bit like when I used to do phone calls. I said, look, I tell you what, let me speak for 30 seconds. If I'll make you a deal, if you don't like what I say after 30 seconds, I will never, ever call you again. Is that fair? Right? And that used to get a great response. Um,
Yeah,
so
obviously,
uh,
we can do that sort of thing in our world, and it's probably
walk
even
away.
harder to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
let's say you're selling something which sort of almost has an infinite supply, like a machine or something.
Yeah.
You could say, look, if they want it in the first quarter, you could say, look, we've had it's been an absolute chock-a-block period. We've had these people take it. If you can't get me an answer by 4, we won't be able to deliver it now till June or April. So unfortunately, I won't be able to fulfill this order by that time. But if you don't make a decision, that's great. That's up to you. But I do wish you well, and I really enjoyed speaking to you. And perhaps we can talk in a couple of months, right? So it's
Yeah.
almost like I'm out. I walked away. I've been in situations. Just reminded me of a story that once this person ran a site which she wrote about the Olympics, and it was at the time when we were hosting the Olympics in the UK, and she wouldn't do it. She just couldn't see it. And I remember just getting up. In the end, I walked out and said, look, you've got an amazing site and people come back to you all the time. And if you don't take advantage of it while we got the Olympics, then you might as well give up and go home. I mean, this is the opportunity, but it's up to you. But I don't have any more time anymore. I'm out. Right. I
Yeah.
walked out. 2 days later, I rang her and said, what do you want to do? And she said, and she took a full page. But because I was prepared to walk away,
Again, though,
then that
it
is very powerful.
it's less powerful though when you walk away by email, though, isn't it? Is it
Yes,
fair to say if you're stuck in
it is less powerful.
if it's fair to say if you are in a situation with email, you are on the back foot a little bit more. It is taking away a lot of your power.
Well, it is take away a little power, but Tom, you may well know I am on the dating scene right now, and if I am getting a little,
Where is this going?
where is this going? I'm giving you my personal. I'm bleeding here, But sometimes, you will get ambivalence, and you will get, and you just say, listen, I don't think this is I just don't feel that you're that interested. But it's been really great. I think you're a wonderful person. I hope you find the person you're looking for. Um, and but
So taking,
and
yeah,
most of the time they come back and go, oh my god, how, and it's that fear a lot. Now, I'm not saying that's the recipe for a good relationship, because
no,
you're constantly playing this pull and pull game, but I'm saying
yeah,
some people can't make a decision, and you're sometimes the best strategy is to say, I can't do it anymore, that I'm out, just
yeah,
walk away. We've sent emails, remember, at the end and said, have you given up on this project? Just that alone.
yeah.
So I
Well,
think
we talk about make emotive words
yeah.
when we do
So
that, where we
I
say,
think,
"Have you abandoned this project?"
yeah,
Because
one
that
one
prompts
of
a
your
response.
options might be give them a deadline. What do we used to say? Decisions will be made. Either you'll make it or time will make it for you.
Yeah,
So, so sometimes a strategy would be, yeah, try to get my phone. I'm not saying this should be your first option, but maybe after 2 weeks, say, look, I can't do this. I've got too many people, I'm too busy, but I wish you well. Oh, I always wish them well. I always say, I hope your business works. Maybe there'll be a time we can speak in the future. You've been really nice. You're a special person, whatever you want to say, the special one, so that could be a response. But one of the things that you want to do with your continual emails up to that point, because everything's a setup, is you want to feel like there's momentum. I always feel like if you've got a deadline, the train is going to leave the station with or without you. It's happening with or without you. If you're asking for investment, this is happening.
yeah,
Because sometimes, I've sold hardware and it's amazing. Customer takes ages and ages to make a decision and then they want it tomorrow. And that
yeah.
is,
No,
and
absolutely.
so you need to know in the sale, what do you want? When do you want it? Why do you want it? And what's the thing that's going to stop you getting what you want? And if
Yeah.
you've covered these things, then
So yeah. So I
you're going
guess
to be in a better
in
situation.
the structure of the email, you almost want to lay out the consequences of their inaction. It's like, oh, that's fine. If you're not making a
Yeah.
decision now, that's your prerogative. But the consequences of you not making a decision are this. And it's incumbent upon me to make you aware of that. And if you don't have a problem with that, if then you don't really want to go, because also putting it on them a little bit. It's like my gut feeling is that you probably, you know, that you're not sure about this and you probably don't want to go ahead. But look, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Throwing something into challenge them. I also think if you're going to ask them a question via email, make it an easy one to answer. Because if a typical one, a salesperson might answer to that. It's like, okay, I understand. When do you think you'll be able to come back to me with a decision? 99 times out of 100, that question will be ignored because they don't know. And so
No,
they'll look at it and they'll be like, I'm not really sure. And then they'll park it and it's gone. It disappeared into their inbox and they'll never answer it. So if you can kind of come up with a question that's very easy for them to answer, because you want to keep them on a hook, you don't want it to go dead, you don't want it to go cold. So you need to maintain that engagement, maintain a line of contact between you. But like to your point as well, you need to present momentum on your side. You need to
mm,
be like, again, present that position of I'm a busy person, I've got so many things going on. It is that shit or get off the pot kind of mentality. And it doesn't mean taking it away. And salespeople are often scared to take it away because it's like they'll take it. Well, like, what if they take it away and the customer doesn't respond? What if they don't want it? Well, then they don't want it. They've said no, but at least you know.
that's right.
It's
That's right.
like, don't be scared of the no. Embrace it. It's easier to turn a no into a yes than silence.
Well, you can always go back. I've gone back and said, I was going to say, listen, I've just found out some new information. And with new information, new decisions could be made. When are you about? So
Yeah,
sometimes one of the things about emails is be mysterious. I've got some new information. And
yeah.
with new information, new decisions will have to be made. Can we get on the phone to discuss? So don't give them the details. They may
Well,
say, what are they? Say, this
yeah.
can only be explained. I need to show you.
Well, I think there's a lot of nuance to email strategy as well. And I don't think, there's a lot we could talk about in terms of emails and your email strategy with a client that isn't just objection handling. It's not about being on the back foot and having to respond. It's about maintaining momentum and keeping communication. And I think there's a lot more we can talk about when it comes to email strategy in the overall sale. But that'll have to wait
Yeah,
for another week because
that
I
will
think
have to wait for
we're
another week.
because I think
Um,
we're out of time this week.
we're out of time. Yeah, we're out of time. But that has been
Um,
fun.
I think
I've
we
enjoyed
I
myself.
think we're going to have one more episode this side of Christmas.
We should do, shouldn't
I
we?
think this next week. The week after that, I'm in New York,
Well, let's hope you don't ignore
and
me on.
I'm not gonna do it from you.
No, but I'll be sending you an email, Tom. If don't
I'll ignore
ignore
it.
it, ignore
I'll
it.
ignore it. I'll
Okay.
just ignore it.
Then happy. Well, it's not December, is it? Well, happy Thanksgiving to all our
No, last day
American
of the month,
chums.
big day for salespeople. Good luck to everyone trying to get deals over the line, and see you next week.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffer.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Bye.